Okay, I'll try and keep my presentation short, so I might skip quickly. I guess I want to make up for some lost time. Leave some time for questions if people want.
We haven't got everyone back yet, Dave.
Okay.
You've got half an hour. You've got 30 minutes.
Oh, okay. I forgot.
So it's okay. So,
unless that's your trick, do not talk for too long.
Right.
But you don't have to fill 30 minutes. If we've got 30 minutes allotted in the program, and so you take what you need and then questions. It's very informal.
Okay. There's a box in the middle of the screen. Oh, okay, it's fading already. Right. I was wondering if it was obscuring the. Oh, it's coming back.
We can't see it at all.
Oh, okay, that's good. That's fine.
We've just got the PowerPoint slide up with the text on it.
Yeah, I've got to stop using PowerPoint slides. They're quite boring.
I'm going to go and round them up.
Okay.
Welcome back, everyone. We have David Lewis online from Curtin University in Perth. Welcome, David. And
Hello, everyone.
I'll hand over to you to get started on presenting the work that you've done with the Alma Courses API.
Sorry, Sue, I missed that. Do you want me to start now?
Yes, please.
Okay. Good morning to everyone. I'm David Lewis from Curtin University Library. I've had a lot of experience using the Course API, moving from Aleph into Alma and through a series of integration projects where we linked up Leganto with our business system. I've given a technical talk on the wrapper client library that I wrote to work with the Course API in Igloo last year. So if you want to look at the technical side of that library, check out the archives. So I'll move on. Where is it? Okay, a little history. In 2013, we migrated from Aleph into Alma. But Ex Libris told us that they would not help us with courses. So we worked with the SOAP API, and we did our first course loader and got our first version of the client wrapper library. Then in 2015, I think it was, that Ex Libris announced that the SOAP APIs would be deprecated in favor of the REST APIs. That forced us to rewrite everything into a wrapper client that worked with the REST API. And this was just in time for our first Leganto adoption project that involved integrating with the backend business system. And we got our second version of the course loader. Recently, we had another integration project where the previous version of the backend was being replaced, and we got our fourth version with that effort. Of course, the question arises, why do we want to write our own? You know, there is a built-in Alma course loader, but we found that it was really inflexible to us because we want to be able to run it more than twice a day. At the moment, we're running it twice, but soon we will be increasing that to 3 times. As of course, you know, the standard Alma course loader can only be run once a day. The Alma course loader doesn't allow you to recover from errors. You have to always rerun the job or wait for the next day for it to be rerun. So writing our own gave us a lot of flexibility from the point of operations, recovery of errors, and ensuring that courses were created and updated accordingly. So the integration project began. We got news that the current, or at that time it was the current backend system called OLAS, or Online Learning Administration System, was going to be deprecated and replaced by a new system called the OLE, or Online Learning Administration Environment. That necessitated rewriting the loader to suit the new business rules, and of course there would be a change in the data structures that we had to feed off. There was a new requirement which had never been there before, and that was actually the hardest part to work through. With the advent of Leganto, it proved to be a success, and a lot of instructors were on board, so it's become a very critical part of learning delivery in Curtin University. So there was an added pressure to make sure that this integration worked and it was successful. So when we started off, we had a few considerations. In our previous integration project, we saw how important quotas were. We learned that quotas summed across all our applications. We have quite a few applications running at Curtin, and as time moved on, we actually came very close to reaching that quota limit because there were inherent efficiencies in the course loader. So that's quite a cost to bear. Our courses could have stopped being uploaded, but given that we knew about it, we were prepared, and so we bore that in mind when we proceeded with this integration project. It was compounded by the fact that the new system would be creating new courses and updating in real time, so that would actually hit the system much more than it had before. The easiest part of the course was, the integration project, was to actually figure out how you would map the source business data into an Alma course. It simply was a case of drawing up a table, a few email exchanges, and then just filling out a form. But the hardest part was actually how to meet the new requirement, which was course collapsing. This was a problem because it had been promised before we were even consulted. We had no idea how it would work and what the implications were. But basically, course collapsing works like this. In Curtin, we have the notion of course availabilities. I don't know if other universities have the same idea, but an availability represents the what, the when, the whom, and the how courses are delivered. So the what refers to the course subject. The when is which year, which semester. The whom is the cohort. So for instance, the Curtin Bentley campus cohort, the Singapore cohort, the Dubai cohort, and so on. So you have all these availabilities running throughout the year, or they could run at the same time in different locations. So what the purpose of course collapsing is to really present a single course to students and instructors. Instructors will just work on a single course and add citations and reading lists to that course. And students, when they do their assignments, get their readings, will just work with that one course. The individual availabilities represented in Blackboard as course codes are there administratively, where courses will be cohorts in the course will be given their grades and marks according to their assignments and so on. So on the left-hand side, you have the administration aspect. On the right-hand side, you have the course delivery aspect. We had to figure out how this would work. It was actually the hardest part because one, there was no documentation. We had to read up a lot on Google about the LTI protocol. Ex Libris did have some brief mention, that you would have to search for a way to do the mapping, and that was to be found in, I think it's the developers blog. So for normal courses, we just pass across the course code that students are sitting for. For the collapse courses, we need to provide the nominated parent course code. Sorry, can you hang on a second, please? Apologies. Can you hear me? Hello? Hello? Hello?
It's okay, David, we can hear you.
Right, sorry, somebody came at the door. I was a bit distracted. Okay, so this screenshot comes about when you switch on the debugging aspect of the LTI link. So what it shows us is a list of variables and the values held in those variables. So the two key variables are the course ID and the context label. For a collapsed course and for a normal course, the context label contains the course that we really want students and instructors to see. So according to the Ex Libris documentation, you need to take the variable name and enter it into the Alma configuration profile for the LTI link. That would be the course code field name. And this was basically as simple as it got, but it took us a little bit of time to figure out how to do it. So at a bird's eye view, this is how the whole integration works. The OLE system is this box university course provisioning system. Now that is the authoritative source. And it begins by pushing in the information of courses into Blackboard and to our Oracle staging tables. The course loader, on its scheduled runs, picks up the latest changes and new courses from the staging table, decides if it's a new course or an update, and then requests the API gateway accordingly. What the gateway API does is it either updates or creates courses in the Alma database and responds with the latest view or the state of the course that Alma recognizes. The course loader will cache this. So at the point that the course is created or updated, the state is captured and it will be identical between the Oracle staging table, the cache, and the Alma database. When the state changes in the Oracle table, it's compared against the cache. If it's not a valid update that we're interested in, we just skip it. If it is of interest, then we'll go through the same cycle and make sure that the state is captured. So you have this triangle here, and this is how the Blackboard, sorry, the course loader keeps on working. Of course, the Blackboard will also be updated and have the same state that the cache has, will eventually have. Once the student or the instructor logs into Blackboard and clicks the reading list link, it's brought into Leganto. Leganto identifies you as either an instructor or a student, and it pulls out the course, the reading list, based on what the context label tells it. Then it puts you in the right view with the right course and the right reading list. And that sums up how the whole integration process takes place. As we progress through the project, and even after we moved production, we came across a few problems. Because of the frequency of updates, we didn't realize it would reach that level. So we were actually making a lot of API calls, which actually proved to be unnecessary. That's when we came up with using two approaches, which was to use the runtime stamp, the last runtime stamp, and caching. Those actually helped a lot. When errors occurred because of loading, we didn't know why they were happening. So we had to start handling new errors that we'd never encountered before. The result was that courses would go missing, updates were not being pushed through, and we got a lot of calls from the instructors and the support officers. When we discovered that the back office, sorry, the Alma back office and API gateway got loaded, we had all sorts of errors coming through. For instance, errors come back, specific classes of errors come back in XML, not in JSON. So we would find that our programs were, our course loader was crashing, and it was showing a string of XML rather than JSON, which is what happens when JSON tries to parse XML. So we took a different approach. We changed everything from JSON, working with JSON, to just XML, and that simplified a lot of program logic. Some of the lessons that we learned, of course, I'm pretty sure that a lot of people here have the same experience, but I think they're worth mentioning. When we started the project, we didn't have much time and we didn't ask a lot of questions. In hindsight, we should have, and these are just some of the questions that we should have asked, because it put us in a position where we were doubly stressed, and because we didn't know how to deliver the requirement of course collapsing. The project managers were not from the library, they were from a different group within Curtin University, and they did not see the importance of the library's reading list solution in course delivery. So we had to keep on knocking doors and pestering them to get them to tell us what was actually going on. Start early. That's one of the lessons we learned. And it was a good thing that we applied it in advance. Our previous experience showed us that there would be problems that we would encounter. But at least you can think clearly when you're preparing ahead of time. You can simulate your own data if you can, and test your libraries and your course loader. One point to be very wary of is everyone else's schedules. We did find that the project team that was responsible for developing the new system was behind time. I think it was about 1.5 months. So we did not have data for about 3 weeks to test. So we were late in delivering to production, but we only missed it by a week, which is quite good considering. There again, manage the managers and keep pestering them. Now, we learned this after we switched over to production, when we found out that courses were being updated several times a day. If you totaled up the number of updates, it would run into close to 100,000. The course loader simply could not manage those kinds of those levels of updates. We had to bear in mind that it's the same API gateway for everyone. All institutions are using the same gateway, and we were hammering it with something like a few hundred calls a second. So my apologies to everyone. It wasn't our fault. So to be more efficient, you should try and eliminate your window of interest. In other words, if you compare records that were updated or created after a certain time, then you actually cut down the number of records you're going to be working on. And this is basically the concept of the Primo pipe last run timestamp. Caching was a very important implementation, which came after we switched over to production. We actually reduced the amount of work down to 5% of the number of updates that are of interest to us. So that was a pretty good improvement in overall performance. Logging is very important because we were able to find out what was causing the problem. It's also a good audit trail. If you find problems down the road, you can always reference the logs as to what happened at the time it did happen, if that makes sense. When it comes to raising calls with Ex Libris, your logs will be very useful and can be very important in quickly resolving your issues. So it's not something to overlook. So always remember what you've done. Past experiences can help you anticipate a lot, especially the risks. We knew that the reading list had already become a very important part of lesson delivery. So the library's reputation was at stake, because if we did not achieve the course collapsing requirement, the whole reading solution, the whole reading list solution would have been thrown out the door. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. I think we've got maybe 10 minutes of questions.
Thanks, David.
You're welcome.
Questions? I think the lessons learned that you highlighted were very relevant to any of the projects and the work being done. And I think, I'm not sure whether you mentioned this at the beginning, but this was in the context of a full rollout for Leganto. Is that correct? You had this up and running as part of the full rollout?
Yes. Well, actually, no. The we'd done Leganto much earlier, so this was the second integration project that we'd done with Leganto, because the first project we did was with an older system, and so we were basically doing it all over again.
Are the learning objects in MyDay?
There's a question from Grant
Yep.
Jackson. Are there learning objects in MyDay? Are you using MyDay for learning objects?
We're only just beginning to use MyDay. We are in the middle of a project that will involve integration with MyDay. So yes, we will use some learning objects if there are. It depends on whether our end users, the instructors, will be interested in using MyDay's functions.
David, thank you for that. Masood here. Just two quick questions. One, is this a consistent rollover or continuous rollover for your courses because of the way you've architected it? Or do you do it at a specific time of the year where you just say, okay, update everything now?
No, it runs every day. The thing is that we get some courses are in in a state of flux because the instructors can change from week to week. So what we're looking out for when the course loader runs is changes to the instructor field. So yes, it actually does change on a daily basis.
Right, thank you. And the second part was, if you have to change anything now based on the lessons learned from a coding perspective, is there something you would change?
Yeah, you see, the course loader is too tightly coupled, the job itself, the script. So my thinking is that it should be more modular. The business logic is captured in a subroutine, which is part of the course loader. I am really thinking of moving that out so that I don't have to go in and repair the whole course loader. I just need to repair a business model class or overload or overlap. What's the term for it? Overload it. That's one of the things I would change. I would also add on some other minor things which I'm thinking of, which I can't really remember now. I've got them in my notes, which were good to have.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
David, Steve here from University of South Australia. You mentioned in your presentation that there can sometimes be a poor understanding or low value placed by senior management on the library's contribution to course delivery.
Yes.
Suggestions as to how we can change that?
It's more of a political thing, and I think the senior managers of the library need to meet with the senior staff in the schools and faculties to make them aware that you know, hey, this is important for your lesson delivery. When you do meet up with project teams, please mention this to them, that, you know, include the library in all your decisions of what to offer, because that was the real problem that we faced. It was a point of stress because we had no idea how to make it work. Did I get your question right?
You did. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks very much, David.
Oh, you're welcome.
Can you just stop sharing so that we can then start sharing from our end?
Okay.
And we'll continue with the next section, which is
All right.
from Lincoln University. So please stay online and stream. And
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
thank you. Oh.
Okay. Is everything fine?
Yes, I think so. We just need to
Share screen at the bottom.
I can't see. Yeah, you've got it.
Yeah.
I'll let you drive.
Oh,
And then
that's dangerous.
is that us?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep, that's fine.
And then
I'll find my
down here.
Yep. That's what I'm starting with, isn't it?
Yeah.
David, can you mute yourself just so that we don't have any background noise?
Okay.
And you can see Deborah's presentation.
I think you can. Yeah.
I think so. Okay. Yeah, Sam Germain's screen, is that what it is?
No, no.
Yes.
Yeah, I can see it. I'm going to mute now.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, well, if anyone doesn't see my PowerPoint, then
You can do the resume share. Is that what you
where is it? Oh, yes, there it is. Right. Right.
I think you're sharing the browser, not desktop.
Yeah, okay. Stop share.
Share.
So if I do share and then find the PowerPoint.
Yeah.
No, just leave it desktop.
Top left one, correct desktop. Then I'll click on share screen.
Cool, thank you. That looks good, thanks. Kia ora koutou. I'm Deborah Fitchett from Lincoln University. This is basically an overview of the different APIs that we use at our library. For those of you who are not familiar with Lincoln University, we're a fairly small library university south of Christchurch, within commuting distance. We were founded as an agricultural college in the 19th century, and the building in this photo here, that was the original building of the college, and it was a combination lecture theatres and housing. Nowadays, Lincoln is a university based on the land. It's land-based subjects, so it's got agriculture, but also agribusiness, sustainable production, tourism, recreation, landscape architecture. So anything that's remotely to do with land is part of our remit. And this building actually houses the library. About 5 or 6 years ago, just before I came on board, the library merged with teaching support and learning support. So now we've also got careers advisory, and just in the last month, the disability support team joined us. So all of us combined is about 40 people supporting library teaching, learning, research, careers, research, data management, records management, and so forth. So that's my job, along with 2 members in my team, is to support all of those systems. And that means that I like to keep things fairly simple. Also, I've got a library background, not a coding background, which means I'm self-taught in JavaScript and PHP. And if you want me to do anything beyond that, I'm going to have to hire someone outside the university. So this is just an overview of our use. Excellent. So we're using the Primo Analytics and Alma Analytics, along with a whole bunch of external APIs, feeding into a public statistics dashboard. And that's kind of a pet project that I've been developing over the last few years, just to show off the different things we do in library teaching and learning. Second thing is we use the Alma configuration API to pull down the open hours. Technically, that is done again by the Little Stats program, and then it feeds from there to the library website. We also use the jobs method to run some scheduled tasks. The Bibs API, we use the items methods to print spine labels using Spine-O-Matic, which is great software I could never have written myself. MyDay is a student portal that was driven by the students, and ITS did the bulk of it, and the library was only brought on very much at the periphery. So I believe it uses the loans and requests method from the Bibs API, but it definitely uses the fines and fees method from the users API. And then we also use the authenticate user method for some software we wrote, Alma's. It acts as a gateway between Alma and EZproxy to let our community users access some databases where the vendor permits that. So I'll go into each of these in slightly more detail. First off, little stats. LTL is the acronym for Library Teaching and Learning, so we've used that a bit. So basically, as I said, it's showcasing a range of the statistics from the different areas we support. So if a vendor provides any kind of API or CSV or any machine readable statistics, then I've probably got a widget on here. So outside of Xlibris, that includes Altmetrics for Lincoln Research, usage from our live chat service, a little bit of EZproxy usage, how many people have booked workshops or study rooms or attended careers advice sessions, how many records we've got in our different open access repositories, and how much content from our repositories is cited on Wikipedia. And then inside of Alma, we've got mostly things from the Alma Analytics. So I've got things like circulation desks versus self-check machines, which one wins. For a long time, it looked like the circ desks was winning, and then it turned out that I'd got my Alma Analytics wrong, and all the circ staff were saying, this isn't right, we're not handling this much at the desk. So we fixed that, and they like the graph better now. How much we spend on orders each month, how much people borrow annually each year, which is very clearly going down. The first year there, we migrated to Alma in August 2014, so that's why that's low. How much people use our leisure reading material, how many users we have in different user groups. And then we've got this one here that uses the Primo Analytics API and just does a word cloud of the top 10 search queries at any given time. And this one uses the status API, and I'm going to talk a bit more about that in a different PowerPoint. So I've got the code for this on GitHub. It's all in PHP. I've been working on it for, it looks like, about 3 years. Hopefully I'm not sure if anyone else has implemented it. I think some people have sort of looked at it and expressed interest, but it should all be there to just download and run, ideally. There's a couple of external JavaScript libraries which do all the graphs and the word clouds. So basically you set up the config file with your own API keys and endpoints. Then you can set up sort of stanzas in the toSchedule file. So for each widget you want, you say, this is what title I want it to be, this is what the notes should say, this is the actual, it's coming from Alma or whatever. And these are the tags. So you can, we've got tags for library, research, teaching, learning, open access, that kind of thing. For Alma Analytics, you'll also have obviously set up an actual Alma Analytics report, and it connects to that. So the system then connects to each of those APIs in turn, and it uses the code in the connections files. There's a bit of caching in there. At that point, it saves the data as CSVs to the local system. So the original version I had, every time someone visited the page, it would use the caching, but otherwise it would go straight to the API. And of course, the first time it's trying to go to Scopus and running 12 different API calls, it takes a while to load the page. So I've ended up, it runs as a scheduled task each day to download the content, save it as a CSV file, and then the actual index PHP page, when a user views it, it just opens up the CSVs and displays the widgets using those JavaScript libraries. If someone, I don't know, there may be a few people out in the world still who don't have JavaScript, and in that case it falls back to just displaying the data as in table format. So one of the things it's doing is actually pulling down the open hours from the Alma API into a CSV format. So it basically creates this one line per day. This took me a while to, the way Alma stores its open hours data, I don't know if anyone else has worked with it, but it's a nightmare. So I didn't want, we have some history with our open hours software anyway. It was originally written using Google Calendar, and then Google Calendar changed something, and so someone who worked there before me rewrote our code to work with our own SQL database. And then we got Alma, and I thought, well, let's just use the Alma API so we've got one single source of truth. And so I've rewritten it again. So I haven't actually shared the most up-to-date code. It's because I think it's probably the clunkiest version of open hours software out there. I know there's a lot of different open hours solutions out there, and they're probably all better than ours, which is just sort of developed by accretion. But at the moment, once we've got that CSV file, we can use that to display just today's date on the website. And we've got the current weeks if you go under About Us. And if people click on more hours, then they get to the full calendar. So the calendar display data code, which was written by a predecessor or two, is available up at that link. And the main point of distinction for that is that we've got bilingual days and months and so forth in there, which we wanted to support Te Reo Maori. So jobs. How many people here do any publishing to OCLC? You don't know, or just don't? Yeah, I don't want to. I've spent, seriously, ever since we implemented with Alma, this has been the bane of my existence. We have to publish to OCLC, as far as I know, to keep our holdings up to date for Interloan's purposes. For a couple of years, we just couldn't get the published OCLC job working at all. Now it works, but there's frequently mistakes in the data. In any case, I've lost, I mean, we've had a whole series of problems. I've lost track of all of them. At one point, one of the solutions was to run a series of jobs every day just before the published OCLC job ran. So I've got a cron job there that runs this PHP code that basically just triggers the jobs in Alma using the configuration API. But that's actually caused a whole lot of other problems. I'm not very happy with it, but it does what I told it to do. It just doesn't fix our problem. Spine-O-Matic, if anyone is printing spine labels and doesn't use Spine-O-Matic, I think this is the standard software out there. So that is provided by Boston College, and you can download it from their website. They've got thorough documentation. It's pretty easy to use. Occasionally, we find someone's desktop just loses the configuration file, and we just copy the config back in, and it works again. So it's basically a matter of getting your API key, pasting it in, and you're good to go. So MyDay, the students wanted a student portal. They worked with Campus IT to get it developed. They decided on MyDay. and came up with a list of widgets that the students thought were their top priority. Among their top priority was book loans, so what books they've got out, what overdues, and the balance widget, which it always sounds like it's going to show you how much money you've got on your card, but actually it tells you how much money you owe the library. So it's not my idea of a fun widget, but they wanted it. So because ITS was doing the bulk of the work setting this up, I don't know a lot about it. They basically asked me for an API key. I gave it to them. I pointed them to the developers portal and the documentation there, and they seemed to figure out most things. I just had to answer an occasional question. But I think what they ended up using was a combination of the users API for what loans are on your account and what fines you've got, and possibly with the BIBS API for requests information. I'm just not 100% sure. And finally, EZproxy for community users. So this is recreating functionality that had been developed by one of my predecessors for Voyager. Basically, we've got some databases where the vendors will say they can only be used by staff and students, but there's other databases where the license says it can be used by any library users. So we go, excellent, that means our community users can also have access to those. We just need to find out a way to actually technically make that happen. Staff and students have a record in Active Directory, so that's nice and easy with EZproxy. But community users don't have an account in Active Directory, and ITS is never going to give them one. So there's just the Alma account that we've got to work with. So again, one of my predecessors wrote this software, Alma's, which acts as a bridge between Alma and EZproxy using the Alma Users API. That was written when the SOAP API was there, so then my colleague left, and then Alma updated everything to REST, and I had to look at this code and go, I don't understand this code, how am I going to fix it? Fortunately, lots of support on the mailing list, and managed to somehow figure out a way. I don't know if I'd be able to understand it now if I looked again at it, but the code is up there and it's still working for us. So essentially, we've got two login boxes on the EZproxy login screen. The top one, if you submit your credentials there, it will authenticate against Active Directory. And the bottom one authenticates against Alma's, which uses the Alma Users API. If Alma says, yes, this person is using their correct password, then Alma's tells EZproxy, yes, they're authenticated, they're authorized to be in these particular groups, and then they get access to the appropriate databases. So that's the quick overview. That's our GitHub repository, and it's got all of our code that I've just mentioned and a couple of other things. Happy to answer any questions.
I have a question for you. I'm trying to read it, if I can get the background information before I ask this stupid question.
No.
Alma's,
yes.
With the Ex Libris identity service coming in.
Yes.
Is that going to break?
Yeah, probably. so we have been very active. Every time any survey comes out saying, what's your thoughts on this? I've written back screeds saying I have thoughts on this. Yeah. So at least there will be an identity service. I'm still waiting to see what it looks like and how much I have to change the code to interact with it. I am hoping and assuming that it will still have an API. It would be really nice if they even use the same API, but it sounds like maybe not. But yeah, I'll find out when they tell us more. Yeah.
So more of an idea, but considering Nish has done the OAuth2 work with Alma, and OAuth2 is supported in Alma, even after the new identity service, can these to be integrated to provide
For all choosers and also all students for now.
Is it not?
No.
What about all that social authentication?
Yeah. But I think it's only restricted to their supported social networks, not overall general.
Ah, right.
Yeah.
But I think they do support Facebook and Twitter, don't they?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'd prefer not. I mean, a lot of our community users are more elderly members of the community. They may not have social media accounts. Even if they do, I don't know if they'll be able to deal with anything much more complicated.
What do you use for authentication? I'm sorry.
So for EZproxy or for Alma. So most students don't have to authenticate directly to Alma. It's more logging into Primo. But yeah, so we use Shibboleth for staff and students, and Alma internal authentication for community users.
Just going back to the MyDay.
Yes.
And the tile there for the book loans.
Yeah.
So just from the students' experience there, what do they see when they click on that book loans? Do they just get
I was going to
list of everything, or they just get a count and here's the link through to Primo? Or?
It's pretty much a list. I was going to do a demo and then I remembered I don't have any books out at the moment. Yeah. So yeah, it basically gives a list, a title, I think the author, and the due date, and then if it's overdue, it will sort of alert you on that. And I think it will also tell you if you've requested any books that are now available for you to pick up. I'm not sure if it even links through to Primo actually. Okay. It's pretty rudimentary at this point.
When our IT department were starting to develop some similar kind of thing, fortunately they said we're going to do this, so I actually wrote up a spec and said I want it to work like this, and so that was actually quite good that they were able to build that in. And more recently we've just added in the request as well, but it's very simple. It's just here's a count of your loans, here's a count of your document delivery requests, here's a count of your hold requests, and then they just link through to Primo to actually
the details.
The details.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I mean, our ITS basically pulled this together over the summer semester. They had a bit of, along with while various other projects were going on. So they've done a pretty good job in the short amount of time. But most of the things in here so far are rudimentary, and the idea is that they'll just keep developing things as we go, based on student feedback.
Just a comment. We keep our EZproxy alumni separate from our normal users. We do everything through EZproxy, so on campus and off campus. But for our alumni, we keep a separate instance of EZproxy. And for that, we have a users.txt file that we record all the users. So that's the way we give our users access to EZproxy.
Well, we've only got one instance. I mean, we could still do that. You can create a group. For alumni, I mean, we've got there's one group of alumni, and we've only got usually like half a dozen alumni are actually members at any given time. But there's a wider group of community members, which might be even, they're often just people in the township who feel a connection or just want to read the more scholarly books. There might be farmers nearby, or and I think there's just enough of them that keeping them in the user's text file would be a bit of a nuisance. It would be possible if Ex Libris completely messes up the identity system. But not our preferred solution.
Another question. Are you a Leganto site?
Not yet. At the moment, we're Equella. We are thinking of Leganto, and our teaching, my teaching colleagues are quite keen on it because it looks really nice. We've only had one demonstration so far, and I think we need to look more closely at what support it has for objects created by our own staff, PowerPoints and so forth, both in terms of storing them and in terms of making them available open access, which is what we do in Equella at the moment.
So I was just starting to, your presentations made me start to think about, okay, what is there in Leganto that we might want to plug into our student portal that says, here's
Yes.
some readings that have just been added to your lists. Or
Absolutely. Yeah.
Just back onto the identity management
Yep.
conversation. Most universities now, under the recent audit agreement with Microsoft, are going down the Azure Active Directory path. I'm just wondering whether that's going to provide some options for authentication for community users and so forth.
Yeah, possibly. I'm not sure what our university's plans are with identity management. I mostly know that identity management is a mess because there's a whole lot of different systems with different parts of it, and they don't talk to each other very well. Yeah, certainly something I can keep an eye out. The main thing is that I suspect even with that system, ITS would probably be pretty hesitant to give community members of the library an account that might risk giving them access to different parts of the university. But you know, and a more robust solution might prevent those concerns.
Actually, I just have a quick comment about the EZproxy authentication from Alma.
Yeah.
We actually have used and might still be using a combination of those two things. So I think my colleague wrote a script to extract from Alma Analytics, to create the user text file.
Yep.
And you can have a authentication stack, so you can go there first.
Yep.
Problem is that automation, actually, by the time things get entered into HR and then the library pulls the information in and then it appears on analytics, has about 1 or 2 day delay, which means people who register and would like to borrow books right now.
Yep.
Sorry, books right now. I can't. So there's actually a place for putting this in our institution anyway, as like a fallback to get the people who have just registered today, and they can borrow basically as soon as they have an account.
Yeah, I think that speed hasn't been a driver for us per se, but it's the way the system works, it would give you that. Yeah. So you could.
Just going to add to the point that was made earlier about Azure. So one thing we are trying to do is get away from Alma internal authentication as much as possible, just to prepare ourselves for what might come our way. And we use Shibboleth, but cosign on top of it, which is like an authentication system. And cosign has this feature of connecting to what's called a cosign friends account. So your central IDP, identity provider database, is the Active Directory, but you also have a separate database that we use for external users or contractors or anything else. And every time a query goes, it first looks for AD, and if it's not there, it then looks for the federated identity in the other database. But we also have a new partnership in the UK called University Academy 92, which is a partnership with the, anyone football fan? Soccer for you fan. Manchester United class of 1992, Gary Neville, etc., etc. It's a partnership between them and us about generating a university for sports and media and publishing, basically. And Microsoft is a big partner in that, so they want an Azure directory there. But what we're trying to do is connect first to our own AD for our own authentication, then the separate database for contractors, and then an ADFS-based verification to the Azure Active Directory as well. So it's all possible, just complex, and it's killing us at the moment.
Okay, please stand.
We'll still have to lunch.